It was a cold, bitter night in the quiet town of Ashford, a place where nothing much ever seemed to happen. Nestled deep in the woods of New England, this town was the epitome of peace, or so it appeared. The small town, with its vintage houses and foggy streets, was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and children played outside until the sun dipped behind the hills. Leila Monroe, a 25-year-old librarian, was Ashford's epitome of serenity. She had grown up here, and though she was kind-hearted and gentle, something about her always seemed different. Leila had an insatiable curiosity for the unknown, and her fascination with the dark legends of Ashford often led her to late-night reading sessions and long walks in the woods. But the townspeople had always warned her, "Don't go too far, the woods don't forgive." Her latest obsession was a strange book she had found tucked away in the corner of the library's old archives. It was filled with bizarre, incomprehensible symbols and tales of long-forgotten disappearances in Ashford. As Leila began reading it, she felt an odd chill run through her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, that she was being drawn into a web much larger than herself. November 17th. 10 p.m. Leila was supposed to be home by now. Grace, her best friend, Saturday by the phone, worry gnawing at her. Leila had told her she was going to visit the abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of Ashford, a place that had been abandoned for decades. There were rumors that it was cursed, that it had been the site of a gruesome murder decades ago. But Leila wasn't scared. She believed there was something hidden there, something that could explain the strange disappearances that plagued the town's history. When Grace tried calling her, there was no answer. The phone rang out in silence. At 1 a.m., Grace received a text. "I found something. It's worse than I thought. Don't come looking for me." That was the last anyone heard from Leila. The following morning, the police discovered Leila's car parked near the farmhouse. The door was left ajar. Her purse was still inside, and there were strange markings drawn in the dirt around the vehicle, symbols that seemed almost alive. The markings seemed to pulse, as if they were beckoning her into the woods. The whole town of Ashford was in turmoil. The police started a full investigation, searching every inch of the woods and the farmhouse. But as the hours turned into days, no trace of Leila was found. Her disappearance seemed impossible to explain. Grace, however, refused to give up. She knew something wasn't right. The town's history was riddled with mysteries that had never been solved: disappearances, strange deaths, and whispers of a dark force that loomed over Ashford. She began to investigate on her own, sneaking into the town's old archives late at night. She pored over records of missing persons, only to find disturbing patterns. Each case had one thing in common: they had all been last seen near the farmhouse, or in the woods surrounding it. It seemed like every decade, a new person would vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions. Grace's heart sank as she uncovered a chilling detail from the archives. There had been a ritual performed at the farmhouse, a ritual meant to summon a powerful being from the dark realms. A man named Elias Blackwood had once lived in the farmhouse, and it was said that he had made a terrible pact with a supernatural entity. The price of his deal had been the souls of the townspeople. As Grace read through the journal, she felt a wave of dread wash over her. The missing people had all been sacrificed to this entity, their souls trapped in the farmhouse, forever bound by the curse. Grace knew she had to find Leila before it was too late. But the deeper she dug, the stranger things became. Her phone would glitch at odd moments, showing distorted images of Leela standing in the woods, her eyes wide with fear. At night, Grace would hear whispers in the darkness, calling her name. The shadows seemed to grow longer, the fog thicker, and the feeling of being watched became unbearable. One night, Grace could no longer resist. She ventured to the farmhouse, despite the warnings. As she stepped inside, she felt the temperature drop. The air grew thick with the smell of decay. The house seemed alive, as if it was breathing, waiting for her. Where, in the attic, she found a hidden room filled with old relics, candles, and strange artifacts. On the wall was a large map of Ashford, with markings on the places where the disappearances had occurred. A chill ran down her spine as she saw Leela's name written in red ink, marked as the next victim. Suddenly, Grace heard a faint voice calling her from the darkness. She turned, her breath catching in her throat. It was Leela, standing in the doorway, her eyes vacant and hollow. "They took me, Grace. They took me, and now they want you too." Before Grace could react, the room filled with an oppressive force. The walls began to close in, and the house seemed to warp around her. She could feel the very ground beneath her feet tremble as if something was stirring beneath it. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker, and the temperature plummeted to a freezing point. As Grace tried to escape, she stumbled across Elias Blackwood's journal, lying open on the floor. The last entry was chilling. "The price of knowing the truth is the price of your soul. You cannot escape what you have awakened. The curse is eternal." In that moment, Grace understood the terrible truth. The disappearances were never random. They were the result of a dark pact that had cursed Ashford for generations. Leela, like those before her, had become a part of that curse, set her soul forever bound to the farmhouse. But it wasn't over. Grace had unwittingly triggered the final phase of the ritual. As she fled, she realized that Leela wasn't just a victim, she had become the entity's vessel, a harbinger of doom for anyone who dared to uncover the secrets of the farmhouse. In the days that followed, Grace vanished without a trace. Some say she is still wandering the woods, her spirit lost, forever trapped between the living and the dead. Others claim they hear whispers in the fog, calling out to those who dared to listen, warning them to never come close. The farmhouse still stands, abandoned but not empty. Some say the dark entity that once lived there still waits, patient and hungry, for its next victim.